Are you tired of waking up, walking out to your beautiful garden, only to find your precious tomato plants wilted and your root vegetables ruined by unseen underground monsters? What if I told you that you could completely destroy these pests while you sleep, without spending a single penny on toxic chemical sprays? Today, we are diving deep into a forgotten 300-year-old trick that is going to blow your mind. You will learn how simply burying a basic wooden stick in your garden bed can save your entire harvest and save your back from endless hours of frustrating labor. This sounds crazy, right? Most modern gardeners think you need to poison the soil or dig it up constantly to get rid of bugs, but that is a complete myth. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to use nature against itself to triple your yields with almost zero physical effort. If you love the idea of smart, lazy gardening, grab a cup of coffee, because this secret is about to change the way you grow food forever. Before we get our hands dirty, let us step back in time. Long before giant corporations started selling us expensive bottles of synthetic pesticides, our ancestors had to rely on pure observation and natural biology to protect their crops. 3 centuries ago, farmers noticed something fascinating happening in the soil around old, decaying tree stumps and fallen branches. They saw that root-eating pests, like the dreaded wireworm and the hungry white grub, were magnetically drawn away from healthy crops and towards the decomposing wood. At the same time, the plants growing near this rotting wood were somehow stronger, greener, and more resistant to disease. What these ancient gardeners discovered by accident was a perfect biological trap combined with a soil immunity booster. They realized that pests are naturally lazy, just like we want to be. Given the choice between fighting a healthy living root or easily munching on a decaying piece of wood, the pests will choose the wood every single time. Today, modern science has actually proven exactly why this old folk method works so flawlessly, and it has to do with how plants and fungi communicate beneath the earth. Let us dive straight into the exact mechanism of this brilliant trap and why it works so perfectly for wireworms and grubs. Imagine your garden soil as a vast underground city. When you plant fresh, tender vegetable seedlings, you are essentially opening a 5-star restaurant for every hungry pest in the neighborhood. Wireworms, which are the larvae of click beetles, are notorious for ruining root crops and destroying the stems of young tomato plants. They travel through the soil looking for moisture and sweet starches. This is where our buried stick comes into play. By burying a specific type of decaying wood just below the surface, you are creating a highly concentrated, incredibly attractive decoy. The pests sense the moisture and the decomposing organic matter. It acts like a powerful magnet. Instead of spending their energy attacking your precious vegetable roots, they migrate toward the stick. They burrow into the soft wood to feed and lay their eggs. You are actively manipulating their natural instincts against them. It is a completely passive system. You do not need to spray anything or monitor the garden constantly. The stick does all the heavy lifting for you while you sleep. This simple piece of wood becomes a sacrificial lamb, keeping the primary danger far away from your harvest. Now, let us talk about the biological shift that happens in your soil. When you introduce this method, the magic of the buried stick goes far beyond just trapping insects. When you place untreated wood into the earth, it immediately begins to interact with the local microbiology. It becomes a breeding ground for incredibly beneficial organisms, specifically beneficial fungi. Have you ever heard of mycorrhizae? It is a type of fungus that forms a symbiotic relationship with plant roots. When the buried stick starts to decay, it provides the perfect carbon food source for these good fungi to multiply rapidly. Think of this fungus as an underground internet and a defensive army all rolled into one. The fungal threads reach out through the soil and attach to your vegetable roots. They actually help the plant absorb water and nutrients much faster than the plant could on its own. But even better, this fungal network acts as a physical shield. When bad bacteria or harmful nematodes try to attack your plant, the good fungi actively repel them. So by burying a single stick, you're not just distracting the bad bugs, you are actively breeding a microscopic army that defends your garden around the clock. So, how do we actually put this into practice? Step 1 is choosing the right piece of wood, because not all sticks are created equal. You cannot just grab any random piece of scrap lumber from your garage. Treated wood, painted wood, or wood that has been stained is absolutely forbidden. The chemicals in those will poison your soil and kill the beneficial microbes we are trying to attract. You need raw, natural, untreated wood. Softwoods and fruitwoods are your absolute best choice. Think about apple tree branches, willow, birch, or alder. These woods are porous, hold moisture beautifully, and break down at the perfect rate to attract pests quickly. Pine or cedar can sometimes be too resinous and might actually repel the very pests we are trying to trap. You want branches that are about as thick as your wrist and roughly 8 to 12 inches long. If you have recently pruned your fruit trees, those discarded branches are exactly what you need. You are essentially taking waste material from one part of your garden and turning it into a high-value pest control system for your vegetable beds. It is the ultimate expression of smart, lazy gardening. Once you have selected your perfect branches, step 2 is preparation. You do not want to just bury a bone-dry stick into dry soil. Pests are drawn to moisture just as much as they are drawn to food. To make your trap absolutely irresistible, you need to soak the wood first. Fill a bucket with plain rainwater or dechlorinated tap water. Drop your cut branches into the water and let them soak for about 48 hours. You want the wood to become heavy and fully saturated like a sponge. For an even more powerful effect, some old-school gardeners like to add a handful of compost or a splash of compost tea to the soaking water. This inoculates the stick with good bacteria right from the start. The goal here is to make the stick smell like a rotting, delicious feast to the underground bugs. When you finally pull the wood out of the water, it should feel damp and slightly heavy. This soaked wood will remain moist underground for weeks, creating a humid microclimate that wireworms and grubs simply cannot resist. They will abandon the dry areas around your plant roots and head straight for the damp oasis you have carefully prepared for them. Let us talk about placement strategy, specifically for high-value crops like your tomato beds. Tomatoes are notorious for being susceptible to root damage early in the season. You want to install your traps about 2 weeks before you actually plant your tomato seedlings out in the garden. Dig a small trench about 4 to 6 inches deep, located right in the center of your planting rows or at the edges of your raised beds. Place your soaked sticks horizontally into the trench and cover them loosely with soil. Mark the spot with a small stone or a plant tag so you do not forget where you put them. By the time you plant your tomatoes, the stick will have already begun emitting that attractive decaying scent. Any wireworms or grubs overwintering in your soil will have already migrated away from the planting zones and moved into the wood. When your delicate tomato roots finally hit the soil, they will have a completely clear, pest-free path to grow deeply and strongly. You are essentially clearing the battlefield before your plants even arrive. It is a brilliant preemptive strike that requires almost zero physical exertion. Timing is everything when it comes to the garden, and the timing of setting these traps gives you a massive advantage over summer pest explosions. The absolute best time to implement this 300-year-old trick is in the early spring, right as the soil begins to warm up, but before the heavy planting season begins. Pests wake up hungry from their winter dormancy. They are desperately searching for their first meal. Because your seeds and seedlings are not in the ground yet, your buried stick is the only restaurant open in town. By capturing the very first generation of pests in the spring, you prevent them from maturing, mating, and laying thousands of eggs later in the summer. It is all about breaking the life cycle. A few minutes of work in April or May translates to hundreds of hours saved in July and August. You will not be out there in the sweltering heat, spraying organic pesticides or picking bugs off leaves by hand, because you eliminated the ancestors of those bugs months ago. This is what we mean when we talk about lazy gardening. You are working with the seasons, not against them. Now, here is the most crucial part of the operation: checking the trap. This is not a plant it and forget it situation if you have a heavy infestation. After about 3 weeks of the stick being underground, it is time to harvest your catch. Take a small hand trowel and carefully unearth the stick. You will likely be amazed and perhaps a little grossed out by what you find. The soft, decaying wood will be riddled with holes and covered in wireworms, grubs, and sometimes even root aphids. Carefully lift the entire stick out of the dirt, making sure not to shake the pests back into the soil. Now, you have a choice. You can toss the infested stick into a hot fire pit to destroy the pests instantly. Or, if you keep chickens, simply throw the stick into their pen. Your chickens will go absolutely crazy for the protein-rich grubs, turning your garden pest problem into free, highly nutritious egg production. Once the stick is disposed of, you can drop a fresh, newly soaked stick into the exact same hole to catch any stragglers. You just successfully cleaned your soil without a single drop of poison. But what about the fungal network we talked about earlier? How does pulling up the stick affect the good fungi? Here is the brilliant part. You do not have to pull up every single stick you bury. I highly recommend a dual strategy. Bury some sticks as temporary traps that you remove, but leave other sticks permanently buried at the very edges of your garden beds. These permanent sticks are the ones that will breed trichoderma. Trichoderma is a powerhouse beneficial fungus that colonizes decaying wood. It is extremely aggressive, but only against bad pathogens. It actually attacks and consumes the fungi that cause root rot, blight, and damping off disease in your vegetables. By leaving a few sticks permanently rotting in the soil borders, you are establishing a permanent base camp for trichoderma. As the years go by, This fungus spreads throughout your entire garden bed, creating an invisible, impenetrable shield around your plants. Your soil becomes naturally disease suppressive. This means you will see a massive reduction in blights and wilts, allowing your plants to channel all their energy into producing massive, juicy fruits and vegetables. This ancient method is not just limited to your vegetable rows. Let us talk about your fruit trees. Orchards are huge investments, and nothing is more heartbreaking than losing a mature apple or plum tree to root borers or underground pests. The exact same principle applies here, but on a slightly larger scale. Instead of small sticks, take larger branches, perhaps the thickness of your arm, and bury them in a circle around the drip line of your fruit trees. The drip line is the imaginary circle on the ground directly under the outermost leaves of the tree canopy. This is where the most active, nutrient-absorbing roots are located. By burying decaying wood here, you attract the grubs and borers away from the sensitive tree roots. Furthermore, as the wood breaks down over several years, it releases a slow, steady stream of nutrients and humic acids directly into the tree's feeding zone. It acts like a massive, slow-release organic fertilizer pill. You are protecting the tree from pests while simultaneously feeding it for the next 5 years, all by just burying a log in the grass. At this point, we need to address a massive myth that ruins millions of gardens every year, the myth of deep tilling. Many traditional gardeners believe that you must aggressively rototill or double-dig your garden every spring to chop up grubs and expose pests to the birds. This is actually one of the worst things you can do. When you turn the soil aggressively, you completely destroy the delicate fungal networks we just talked about. You kill the earthworms. You bring weed seeds up to the surface to germinate, and honestly, it is backbreaking, exhausting work. The stick trap method completely replaces the need for deep tilling. By using a targeted decoy, you pull the pests to one specific location without disturbing the entire ecosystem of your garden bed. You let the soil structure remain intact. The fungal internet stays connected. The worms keep aerating the soil naturally. This is the essence of no-dig gardening. You are letting nature do the heavy lifting. You will save money on expensive tiller gas, save your lower back from pain, and end up with far healthier, more resilient soil. To make this 300-year-old trick even more powerful, you can combine it with the concept of companion planting. Think of it as creating a multi-layered defense system. While the buried stick is handling the underground threat of wireworms and grubs, you can plant specific flowers above ground to repel aerial attacks. Marigolds are the absolute perfect companion for this method. Plant a border of marigolds directly above where you have buried your permanent fungal sticks. Marigolds secrete a substance from their roots that actively paralyzes root knot nematodes, a microscopic pest that destroys tomato and cucumber yields. So now you have the decaying wood distracting the large grubs, the beneficial fungi fighting off disease, and the marigold roots creating a chemical barrier against nematodes. Your vegetable roots are sitting in a perfectly protected, luxurious underground fortress. And the best part? It looks beautiful. You get a garden full of vibrant orange and yellow flowers that is secretly operating as a ruthless, highly efficient pest elimination zone. There is a fantastic hidden bonus to burying wood in your garden that we have not fully discussed yet, and that is extreme moisture retention. If you live in an area that experiences hot, dry summers, you know how exhausting it is to stand out there watering your plants every single evening. Buried sticks act exactly like underground sponges. During a heavy rain, or when you do water your garden, the decaying wood absorbs water until it is completely saturated. Then, during the hot, dry days of July and August, when the surrounding soil begins to dry out, the wood slowly releases that stored moisture back into the earth, directly at the root zone where the plants need it most. This mimics the famous Hugelkultur method used in permaculture. Vegetable roots will actually seek out these buried sticks and wrap themselves tightly around the damp wood. This means your plants will survive heat waves with zero wilting, and you can cut your watering chores in half. You are building drought resilience directly into the architecture of your garden beds. If you are someone who grows exclusively in raised beds, you might be wondering if this method applies to you. The answer is a resounding yes. In fact, raised beds are uniquely vulnerable to grub infestations, because the soil in a raised bed is typically loose, warm, and rich in organic matter. Pests love to overwinter in them. Replacing all the expensive compost and topsoil in a raised bed is incredibly costly. Instead, in early spring, bury 3 or 4 soaked sticks in the corners of your raised beds. The pests, trapped in the confined space of the box, will flock to the wood rapidly. Because the area is smaller, the concentration of the trap is much higher. You can easily clean out an entire 4x8 raised bed of wireworms in just a few weeks using this method. It saves you from having to dump out the soil or drench the bed in expensive organic pesticides like neem oil or pyrethrin, which can accidentally harm beneficial earthworms. Keep your raised bed soil pure and undisturbed by letting the stick do the hunting for you. For those of you dealing with a truly severe infestation of wireworms, there is an incredible variation of this trick that supercharges the trap. I call it the potato skewer method. Wireworms are biologically programmed to hunt for starches, and nothing is starchier than a raw potato. Take your soaked wooden stick, but before you bury it, cut a raw potato in half and skewer it right onto the middle of the stick. Bury the whole assembly about 4 inches deep. The smell of the raw, freshly cut potato starch travels through the soil moisture rapidly. It acts like a dinner bell ringing loudly underground. The stick provides the moisture and the habitat, while the potato provides the ultimate high-calorie feast. Leave this supercharged trap in the ground for just 1 week, then pull it up by the stick. The potato will literally be bristling with wireworms like a pincushion. Throw the entire thing into the trash or the chicken run. It is a highly aggressive, deeply satisfying way to clear a bed quickly before planting your most sensitive crops. You might be surprised to learn that this underground method actually helps you deal with above-ground pests like aphids, too. It sounds contradictory, but everything in a garden is connected. Aphids are sap-sucking insects that target weak, stressed plants. They can literally smell when a plant is struggling. If your tomato or pepper plants have their roots constantly chewed on by grubs underground, the plant becomes highly stressed. Its sap pressure drops, and its immune system crashes. This sends a chemical signal into the air that invites every aphid in the neighborhood to come and feast on the leaves. By using the buried stick method to eliminate root damage, your plants grow incredibly robust root systems. Strong roots mean high sap pressure and thick, tough cell walls in the leaves. When an aphid lands on a perfectly healthy, unstressed plant, it literally cannot pierce the tough leaf tissue to feed, and it moves on to find a weaker victim. By fixing the invisible problem underground, you naturally solve the visible problem above ground. Let us talk about getting a head start for next year, because the truly lazy gardener is always thinking one season ahead. While spring is a great time to actively trap bugs, late autumn is the perfect time to build your permanent fungal defenses. After you have pulled up your final harvest in October or November, do not just leave your garden beds bare. Take a bunch of freshly pruned branches, soak them, and bury them deeply down the center of your empty beds. Cover them with a thick layer of fallen autumn leaves or straw mulch. Over the long, cold winter, while you're inside staying warm, those sticks will slowly begin to break down under the snow. The beneficial fungi will have months to colonize the wood without any interruption from your gardening tools. By the time spring arrives, that wood will be perfectly primed, soft, and radiating with healthy biology. Your beds will be completely prepped and protected before you even buy your first packet of seeds. It is the ultimate investment in your soil's future. We really need to emphasize the financial brilliance of this method. Let us do a quick cost comparison. A single bottle of high-quality organic pesticide can easily cost you $20 to $30 at the local garden center, and usually one bottle is never enough for a whole season. You have to reapply it every time it rains. Over a summer, you might spend $100 just trying to keep the bugs at bay. Plus, even organic sprays can drift in the wind and accidentally kill beneficial pollinators like bees and butterflies. On the other hand, the cost of a fallen branch from your own yard is exactly $0. The cost of a bucket of rainwater is $0. You are substituting expensive, repetitive consumption with free natural materials that actually improve your property over time. You are stepping off the consumer treadmill of modern gardening and returning to a self-sufficient, closed-loop system. You keep your money in your wallet, your bees safe in the air, and your soil completely free of heavy metals and synthetic residues. Of course, like any technique, there are a few common mistakes you need to avoid to make sure this works perfectly. The biggest mistake beginners make is burying the stick either way too deep or leaving it totally exposed. If you bury the stick a foot underground, it is too deep. Most wireworms and grubs live in the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil profile because that is where the soil is warmest and where most plant roots are located. If the stick is too deep, the bugs will just ignore it and eat your shallow plant roots instead. If you leave the stick exposed to the air, the sun will dry it out in a day, and it will lose all its attractive power. The sweet spot is burying it horizontally, exactly 3 to 5 inches below the surface. This keeps the wood perpetually moist from the surrounding soil, but keeps it perfectly aligned with the natural travel paths of the pests. Getting this depth right is the absolute key to turning a simple stick into a fatal attraction. This entire philosophy comes down to changing how we view our role in the garden. For generations, we have been taught that a good gardener is one who works the hardest, sweats the most, and wages a constant violent war against nature. But true mastery of the garden looks like laziness to the untrained eye. When you see a gardener relaxing in a lawn chair while their garden explodes with fruit, it is not because they are lucky. It is because they have set up systems that do the work for them. Burying a stick takes exactly 5 minutes of your time, yet it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of the weather. It does not ask for a salary, it does not need a lunch break, and it never forgets to do its job. By shifting your mindset from active destruction of pests to passive manipulation of their habits, you free up your time to actually enjoy the beauty of your homestead. You become a conductor of nature rather than a tired soldier fighting in the dirt. Ultimately, the most beautiful part of this 300-year-old trick is how it ends. When you spray a chemical pesticide, its story ends with pollution. It washes into the groundwater or degrades the soil structure. But when you use the buried stick method, its story ends with creation. After a year or two, the stick that you buried to catch pests will become so soft and decayed that it crumbles at the touch. It transforms into pure, dark, rich humus. It becomes food for the earthworms, which in turn leave castings that feed your tomatoes, your peppers, and your fruit trees. The trap itself transforms into fertilizer. It is a perfect zero-waste cycle. You took a problem, applied a natural solution, and ended up with a permanent upgrade to your soil fertility. This is the deepest secret of successful, self-sufficient gardening. Every action you take should solve an immediate problem while building long-term wealth in your soil. By simply burying a piece of wood, you are participating in a brilliant ecological dance that rewards you with massive, healthy harvests year after year. And there you have it, the incredible truth behind the 300-year-old buried stick trick. Who would have thought that the ultimate weapon against devastating garden pests was not a fancy chemical, but a simple, rotting piece of wood? We have seen how this method uses the pest's own natural instincts against them, drawing wireworms and grubs away from your precious harvest. We have uncovered how it breeds an invisible army of beneficial fungi to protect your roots, and how it turns into a moisture-saving sponge during the hot summer months. By taking 5 minutes to soak and bury a few branches, you are saving yourself months of backbreaking labor, saving your money, and protecting your soil from toxic chemicals. It is the absolute pinnacle of smart, lazy gardening. Now it is your turn to put this ancient wisdom to work. Go out to your yard, find a good branch, and start building your underground defenses today. If you found this secret helpful, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a like so we can keep bringing you the best organic gardening hacks. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What is the single most frustrating pest destroying your garden right now, and are you going to try the stick method to defeat them? Let us talk about it below. And until next time, happy, lazy gardening.